What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Changing things up a little bit, giving a little bit longer of a Ric Flair woo, but either way, we're talking Paddy the Baddy today. For those of you that don't know, he's been going under surgery recently. There's been a lot of things going on, a lot of things being said. It's gonna be an interesting one, I'll say that at the least. Before we get into the thick of things though, if you are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. Now let's get into the thick of things. We've got Paddy the Baddy, just had a recent fight with Jared Gordon, for those of you that don't know. Honestly, I wasn't too sure how he was going to be looking after that fight. Not only was it a controversial decision, I think, but a lot of people saw Paddy Pimblett limping after that. There was rumors before his last fight that he was injured from that fight, and he was limping after this one, and it looked like it might have been in the same sort of injury, and it was kind of just up in the air of what the fuck's wrong with him right now. It ended up being an ankle injury or something to do with his ankle or his foot, and it just seemed like it wasn't the best sort of situation that he ended up being in that Jared Gordon fight when it actually comes down to it. He said in the first round it ended up, getting completely fucking damaged or hurt. He actually said in his video recently that the doctor said, you fought after this happened in the first round, like you should have sat on the stool for the next two rounds. You should not have went back in there. So me hearing that, I was pretty, surprised by that. Not only was he not bullshitting, he was telling the truth, but it was to the extent that he probably shouldn't have continued in that Jared Gordon fight, which is interesting to me. If Jared Gordon did that good against Paddy Pimblett when Paddy Pimblett was, not at his best, I do think that begs the question, what would it look like if Paddy Pimblett was good, if he was 100%? I'm sure Jared Gordon would have had a lot different of a fight, and the decision wouldn't have been as controversial as it was. Some people have Jared Gordon winning it, some people have Paddy Pimblett winning it. I think it was a close fight. I do think that Jared Gordon, in my personal opinion, had done some things that Paddy Pimblett was not doing that won him the fight. One of them being, the takedowns, and another one of them is the striking. I do think that Jared Gordon had somewhat good striking in that fight. I don't think it was as good as Paddy's, but I think it was there. I think that he was throwing shots. I think he was checking kicks. I think that he was doing some things that he needed to do when it came to the fight on the feet. But when it came to the fight on the ground, I think he was doing a lot of good stuff. I think he was looking pretty good as a fighter in general. Now, some people obviously are completely disregarded by what I just said. They're like, nah, fuck that. Paddy Pimblett won 100%. And for those of you that say that, I do somewhat agree with you. I do think there is an argument for Paddy Pimblett winning that fight. Hence why he won the fucking fight. Now hearing that Paddy Pimblett was injured in that, I'm like, wow, well, Jared Gordon, I think, still won that fight in particular, but if these guys were to rematch, I think Paddy Pimblett's going to take it with fucking ease. Not only in the striking department, but if you can't use your legs to really move, then your takedowns aren't going to be there. You're just not going to go for takedowns because it is a lot of force and driving force that you need to use in order to take somebody down. So I can kind of see why Paddy Pimblett wasn't that active in that third and final round. Now, for those of you that haven't seen the video from Paddy Pimblett, I don't know if we can play it right now, but there's a clip of him in the hospital.
Stupid and he's just being a bitter little girl going on every interview site. Oh, I won that fight, I won that fight.
Would you run it back, then?
Yeah, I'm going to punch his head in towards the end of the year. I am going to run it back. I hope he beats Bobby Green. I hope he watches this. You're fucking dog shit.
And my God, was he fucking pissed the fuck off. Now, I'm not going to take every single word he says as, oh, that's exactly what he means. Not only was he in the hospital, but he could have been on some medications. Who knows what he could have been on. He was literally saying, I can't feel this, right before he went off on Jared Gordon. He was literally saying, you're fucking shit. You're a fucking bum. I'll beat you any day of the week. I thought it was pretty entertaining. I do think, seeing somebody in that sort of situation, that's going to be some raw material you're going to get. That's how Paddy Pimblett was feeling at that fucking time, 110%. Now, if you ask him afterwards, he might, bring up that persona and, keep the same storyline. I do think there was a little bit of added stress to that situation, at least a little bit. So, maybe he he wasn't completely 110% speaking the truth and saying Jared Gordon's a bum and whatnot. But I do think that there was somewhat of a respect there between the two before the fight. Whether that respect is still there after the fight and after all this, who knows? There's plenty of interviews that Jared Gordon has done saying that he thought he should have won it. And I definitely think Paddy Pimblett watched those interviews or heard what he was saying and was not happy about it. And we definitely saw that. Now, I do think the Paddy Pimblett injury itself is going to be one that is going to take some time. I believe they said 6 to 10 weeks, which sounds about right for anyone getting a major surgery done on them. So I do think that he is going to be back in the UFC later this year. I don't think it's necessarily going to be this summertime. Obviously, I think everybody wanted to see him in England this past March, but it's just how the ball rolls, and sometimes you just got to roll with the punches, and it's unfortunate we didn't see him. You know, there was a lot of rumors saying he might fight Justin Gaethje. I definitely think if that fight would have happened, the roof would have been blown the fuck off the O2 Arena, but either way, that fight happening, in my eyes at least, Paddy Pimblett's not really even ranked right now, and Justin Gaethje's ranked like top 5, top 3. So I do think that is a little bit of a stretch. And not only that, but the UFC doesn't really want to throw Paddy Pimblett to the wolves necessarily. And giving him Justin Gaethje is 110% throwing him to the fucking wolves. And I'm sure Paddy Pimblett is going to say, I can beat Justin Gaethje with fucking ease. But I do think that Justin Gaethje has a lot more experience, not only in the octagon, not only in the UFC, but in these high pressure situations. He's been there left and fucking right. He's went against Charles Oliveira. He's went against Khabib. He's definitely a veteran fighter, and I do think it would have given Paddy Pimblett a very tough time trying to get a W in Paddy Pimblett's corner. I definitely think it would have been very hard for Paddy Pimblett to win against Justin Gaethje, but again, that was just a really big rumor that was going around. Now, Paddy Pimblett was also saying he would be down to fight Jared Gordon again. Now, obviously, that could be, you know, in 2 to 3 years once they've made a little bit more for themselves as a career in the UFC, but I really don't think that it's not necessarily something that would happen in the near future. I don't think that it's necessarily the most exciting fight to happen, especially when the third round was the third round that we got. It definitely wasn't entertaining in the least bit, and I do think that if Paddy Pimblett was that injured in that fight, which I do think he was, I think that seriously it would be a very one-sided fight in Paddy Pimblett's favor. So I don't think that that is something that the UFC is going to be looking at in the near future for Paddy Pimblett to say. Now, Jared Gordon, on the other hand, is already scheduled to fight Bobby Green April 22nd. So that fight is something that I am 110% down to fucking see. We've got Bobby fucking Green, who always fucking brings it. We've got Jared Gordon coming off of a loss, which he thinks he should have won. I do think that this fight for Jared Gordon is pretty big, not only because he got a loss, but mentally, I think that, you know, he's questioning himself a little bit. You know, does he really think he's that good? Does he think that he could have done better if Paddy Pimblett was injured? Like, how bad was he injured, and how much more could Jared Gordon have really done against the injured Paddy Pimblett? Because if he knows that he gave it his all, it doesn't really look that good if Paddy Pimblett was injured, and he definitely was fucking injured. Like, he got surgery after that fight happened, and he hasn't had any other, you know, injury, or didn't have any other event that he did that he could have got injured in. So that fight was definitely the factor and the leading cause of how he got injured. So when it comes to Jared Gordon's next fight with Bobby Green, I do think it is a little bit more important than some people might think. Not only is it important for his, you know, record and, you know, him getting back in the winning column, but for his confidence, I think it's going to be a really big fight for that, because he's got to gain that confidence back, especially after a loss. I'm not saying he's lost it, but if I'm Jared Gordon and just figuring out that the opponent that I just lost to was injured and I lost to him, I'm going to be like, what the fuck am I doing? If he was injured, I should have wiped the fucking mat with him. He did not wipe the mat with Paddy Pimblett. He left the fight it in the judges' hands, and the judges were thinking of Paddy Pimblett more than Jared Gordon in that situation. Number one, if I'm Jared Gordon, I don't want to leave the fight in the judge's decision. And two, if I do leave the fight in the judge's decision, I want to make it a clear-sided, no ifs, ands, or buts. This was completely my win. It was all me. It was all dominant. I completely wiped the mat with this guy's fucking face. And he didn't do that against an injured opponent. So I think that that's really going to get in the mind of Jared Gordon and make himself question himself a little bit. That may be why we see him in interviews, you know, flaunting some fake confidence. I'm not saying that he's giving out fake confidence or giving off the impression of fake confidence, but I do think that that is something that could 110% happen after figuring out the opponent you just faced and lost to fucking was injured. Either way, when it comes to these two, I am big fans of both. Not only Jared Gordon's story and him coming from that drug-related background, and Paddy Pimblett just coming out of Cage Warriors and being the fucking man in the UFC right now, and he's not even fucking ranked, which I think is crazy. I definitely do think he should be ranked, or at least in the top 10 by now, and I think he will get there soon. And I just hope that, you know, his surgery and his recovery goes well. I know what it's like to come out of surgery, so I really do hope that his recovery goes well and fast, and he gets back to 100%. So thoughts and prayers out to Paddy Pimblett. Thoughts and prayers out to Jared Gordon in his next fight this April 22nd against Bobby Green. We're going to be covering all of it. We're going to be having a watch party next weekend on April 8th. Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave without leaving a like. If you guys are new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And with that, have a great fucking day.